Hello and welcome to the CODESYS Feature Briefing in autumn 2024. Good to have you with us. My name is Hilmar Panzer.
Welcome also from my side. My name is Martin Decke. I will guide you through the individual presentations today and also coordinate the questions received by chat or email. And now let's lift the curtain and enjoy the CODESYS Feature Briefing.
Those of you who attend the feature briefing regularly know that it's conducted twice a year. I'll start by announcing the next date, which is March 19, 2025, the day after the planned release of CODESYS version 3.5 Service Pack 21. This feature briefing will be recorded and will be available to you or your colleagues afterwards. The presentations have been pre-recorded, so the time we give in the agenda on the next slides are fairly accurate. Immediately after my introduction, we will start with the content and show you the new developments around CODESYS and our agenda for the coming month. You are also welcome to send us questions today. As last time, you can either ask them via the YouTube chat. However, this requires your own YouTube channel and is also publicly visible. Alternatively, you have the option of sending us an email at featurebriefing@codesys.com. This is not public. Please always give us the context of your question so that we know what you are referring to. We will either answer you directly or, especially if we think it is a question of general interest, we will answer in the plenary session at the end of the event. If we need to find out more and need more time to answer, we will write to you in the next few days. Now here's the agenda. I will not read it out in detail. The first half is primarily about our development environments and tools. The second part will be about runtime and features. One exception is the last presentation on CODESYS Go, our new engineering platform, which is currently under development and is not yet available to you. But we want to update you about its status and roadmap. A note on upcoming releases. Service Pack 21 is scheduled for release on March 18, as previously mentioned. Throughout the year, we will continue to provide patches for CODESYS Essentials, currently mainly for Service Pack 20. However, we can create patches for older versions on customer request. There are numerous releases on the add-ons every month. This year, for example, there will be around 100 of them. On our website at the given address, we publish which components are due for new versions and when. On a neighboring page, you will find information on the life cycle of our products. I already presented this to you at the last feature briefing, but it might be useful to take another quick look at it. We have defined phases for our products. It starts with the definition and then the development phase. For you as a customer, the product phase is of particular interest. Depending on maturity, there are regular improvements and bug fixes. At the beginning, more frequently with young products. With more mature products, the frequency generally decreases. If it becomes apparent that the product cannot be continued for much longer, it is moved to the service phase. The reasons for this may be economic considerations, for example because a product is less in demand, or practical ones, for example because the appropriate hardware is no longer available. In the service phase, we no longer maintain the product on our own initiative, but only make adjustments and changes at the customer's request and for a fee. During this time, it is only available to existing customers who are instructed not to use it in new projects and who should look for an alternative solution. At the end of the service phase, the product is finally discontinued. That means it is withdrawn from the market. I wanted to point out once again that we have changed the company name in Libraries and Devices, where our old name 3S Smart Software Solution still appears in some cases. As announced, we have done this in almost all libraries now, and there's nothing for you as a user to do. In normal applications, the libraries with the correct company names are automatically recognized and used libraries based on our libs you will have to update the reference. So far, the general introduction. Please enjoy the upcoming presentations.
Hi, my name is Christoph Brachmann. I'm the product manager of the CODESYS development system and the automation platform. We start with general usability improvements in the CODESYS development system. Once you verified the licenses required for your project, you can call up a list of the required licenses with a link to the corresponding CODESYS store. This function is supported by version 3.5, Service Pack 20, Patch 2. The usability of the License Manager is further improved in version 3.5, Service Pack 21. The License Manager will also support network licenses in the future. I will now talk about the graphical editors. Bug fixes and minor improvements have been made to the ladder FBD and CFC editor. An interesting new feature has been added to the SFC editor. This function has to be activated manually. When activated, a linked list of implicit variables is created. The complete SFC structure is visible in this list. Now you have the possibility to control your SFC POU at runtime by an application functionality. This function is used by the CODESYS POU Visu generator to generate the SFC visualization. The presentation of the graphical editors is completed with the new ladder editor. Minor usability improvements and bug fixes have been made to the version 1.1 of the new ladder editor. Other usability improvements have been implemented in the package designer. For example, it is now possible to select multiple device descriptions at the same time. Overall, the performance of the package designer has been significantly improved. We have a more powerful update for the CODESYS installer. Already implemented was a function to create independent CODESYS installation. This was mandatory for the new CODESYS sandbox. The installer can now be used to install and manage the new CODESYS sandbox. A CODESYS sandbox can be created from an existing installation, or you start from scratch with a new installation. I already have created a sandbox. The new installer has transferred the desired installation to a folder structure. With the help of the CODESYS sandbox, it is now possible to archive and distribute the defined CODESYS installation for a project on long-term basis. The CODESYS library documentation support has received a security update. It is now also possible to create POU documentation similar as to the libraries. The current scripting interface is based on IronPython 2.7. The new version of our add-on will support IronPython 3.4 in parallel. CODESYS Trace supports the automation of workflows using the CODESYS scripting API. With the new scripting driver, it is now possible to create traces, configure them by adding variables, and control the recording of the trace online. Last but not least, the CODESYS deployment server has been updated to the .NET 8 framework.
Thanks, Christoph Brachmann. Stay tuned for the next presentation.
Hello, my name is Bernhard Reiter. As product manager, I will inform you about the current developments in the areas of the compiler, the professional developer edition, and our communication protocols.
I'm going to show two new features we're currently working on in the compiler, and I also want to talk about the behavioral change regarding the library management in CODESYS. The first new feature I want to talk about is the possibility to configure compiler warnings as actual errors. Ideally, projects should be free of any kind of warnings because they might indicate unexpected or even unintended behavior of the application. But in the past, it was pretty difficult to actually enforce this rule, especially if you have projects which have an ongoing development for several years. In this time, warnings can accumulate in the project and can be pretty difficult to get rid of again or to remove them all from the project. So the compiler now helps in this by giving the possibility to not only disable certain warnings, but also to configure that certain warnings are reported as actual compiler errors. The configuration happens in the compiler warning screen, as you can see in this screenshot here. The logic is pretty similar to how it also works in a static analysis. So you have 3 possible states for each warning, either reported as warning, which is the default, to not reported at all for the project, or actually reported as an error message. We think this new feature should be pretty helpful in keeping your projects free of any kind of compiler warnings. The next new feature is not actually new in the compiler, but got an usability improvement. For already a few years, it's possible to let the compiler check statically at compile time whether the call stack of the application reaches a certain limit, and then can output this as an error message, and also has the possibility to display the call stack leading to this reaching of the limit in the message view. But obviously the output in the message view is not the most user-friendly way of reporting this kind of message, and also quite hard to understand, especially if the call stacks get more complex, which is usually the case if you are like reaching the limit for it. So we have now here in the task configuration a new tab which now shows graphically the different tasks configured in the application, and also the call stack of the relevant tasks. And here in the detail per line in this, or per row in this table, you can see what is the function being called, what other function does it call, what is the stack size of this individual function, and what is the overall stack consumption up to this point of the function. So this should really help our users to understand where exactly there is an excessive usage of stack memory in their application. Additionally, in this view, we will also give the possibility to not only understand the stack usage, but also to configure and increase the limit available on the runtime from the stack, at least on devices where this is actually possible. The last feature I want to talk about is behavioral change regarding our library management, and especially the default resolution of libraries in the BAU space. In the past, the behavior was that if there is no device in a project available to resolve the library placeholders, there was a fallback mechanism called the default library, which could be set for each placeholder in the library manager, and this default resolution was then used in case no device was available to resolve the library placeholders. Already since Service Pack 18, this is not the default behavior anymore, but instead we basically treat all placeholders which are not resolved by a device as an unbound placeholder, meaning that when the library is inserted, the newest available version matching this placeholder is inserted as a redirection to the library. And this allows a more intuitive way to work with library resolutions in the PU space or when working on library projects, and also makes it more clear for the user how to configure and change these resolutions. So now as the final step of changing this behavior, with Service Pack 21, we will now finally remove in the properties of a placeholder this possibility to configure the default library. You can see it here in this screenshot as the marked line here, which is highlighted, which will be not available anymore in the next version. This was already all changes in the compiler I wanted to talk about. The Professional Developer Edition is a bundle consisting of several different tools. For the next releases, we want to focus on giving our customers the easy possibility to integrate these tools into an overall continuous integration workflow. Specifically, we target for this initially the static analysis, the test manager, and of course our Git integration. In the following presentation, I want to give you more details on the specific features planned for these tools. The first tool I want to talk about is the static analysis. But before going into the new features, I just want to give you a quick reminder that the release 5.0 was released in April this year. Its main topics was the possibility to have immediate feedback during working on your project as a developer, and also to reduce the number of false positive messages reported by the static analysis, so that you have even better feedback on your projects. For the next version 5.1, which is estimated for the second quarter of 2025, we plan, as already mentioned, on improving the integration into continuous integration workflows. Specifically, we plan to support a machine-readable format for the static analysis, because for a CI workflow, it is really important to have the possibility for the CI system to not only execute the static analysis, but also to understand the result and be able to decide whether it was successful or not. For this output format or result format, we decided to go for the static analysis interchange format, short serif, which is a standard by the OASIS Open organization. This format is supported by several different CI systems we investigated, and so this should be a good starting point for integrating the static analysis into these workflows. The next tool we want to make the integration into CI workflows easy is the test manager. Specifically, we plan to do this by creating a very simple scripting driver which allows to execute specific test scripts as part of the workflow. This is already possible now, but it's not very intuitive on how to achieve it, and also not very Python scripting friendly currently. So the scripting driver will not be able to do much initially in the first version, but just enough to get you going for executing predefined test scripts as part of your workflows here. The Git integration add-on is of course also very important for CI workflows. But it is also very important for it to be usable and have a good usability in the daily developer workflow. So on the front-end part of our Git integration, we are working on removing many small annoyances, making small improvements to usability in different dialogues and different parts of the add-on, so that the daily workflow of the users is a bit more comfortable and less annoying when working with the Git integration. Regarding the backend part and the CI integration part, as you know, there are several different server systems or server softwares available which not only offer hosting your Git project, but also have their own custom tools and pipeline workflows to then execute the CI and CD aspects of your development lifecycle. What we want to specifically work on is to improve the possibility and the interoperability of our Git integration add-on with these different server softwares. Currently, there are some issues depending on how your servers might be configured or are set up, and we are now actively testing and investigating issues with different server software so that you have a smooth workflow independent of which exact server software you choose in the future. Of course, the most important topic for our Git users still is the storage format of our CODESYS projects. I already discussed this briefly in the last presentation and talked about a new project format we want to introduce for CODESYS, which is a plain text human readable storage format. This new alternative project storage format will be part of the professional developer edition, and it will help to solve a lot of problems Git users currently have with our project format. So it will be, as mentioned, human readable based on single files, and this means that you do not have or will not have any more two different project locations or storage locations for your project, like one, the project file itself for CODESYS, and then a second location where we managed our alternative project format for our Git integration add-on. So this basically will be now merged into the new project format, and only one storage location for each CODESYS project will exist. Of course, the ability to have it human readable will also improve the workflows in different CI systems, because you can actually do comparison and merges also outside of CODESYS. But please beware that we still recommend to use the Git integration add-on for this workflows, especially merging and comparison. The reasons, or there are two reasons for this basically. The first one is that, of course, comparison for anything other than a structured text file is only possible in CODESYS. So graphical editors, Mayo configuration, visualizations, and specific objects like this. The second reason is that a CODESYS project has more rules and specific semantic rules than can be seen in its file-based storage. So certain operations which you do directly in the file still might damage the project so far that it cannot be opened in CODESYS anymore without having to do some kind of repairs then manually on it. This, the Git integration add-on helps you to avoid the situations, because it knows the additional rules which need to be followed when editing and merging CODESYS projects. And so this gives you still the more trouble-free workflow when doing these kinds of changes. So yeah, in a summary, a file-based storage format which is human readable will be available in the second quarter, we predict, of 2025. This will solve a lot of problems with our Git integration, but still our recommendation will be to continue to use the Git integration add-on when managing CODESYS project in Git systems. Thank you very much for your attention.
Great presentation, Bernhard Reiter. Stay tuned for the next one.
Hello, my name is Ulf Schünemann. I'm Product Manager for Application Technology. I'm telling you the news about our application products. First, the library landscapes. We released the CODESYS base libraries in June. This is the second library add-on after the string libraries in the previous year. It contains 6 existing often needed CODESYS libraries. Of those, 5 are successors of CAI libraries. In SP21, they will be included in the setup, and references and projects will be updated automatically. Also in the next year we will include the memory block manager, which is still missing in that add-on. The discontinuation of the 6 CAI libraries is extended by 3 libraries related to the announced 6 discontinuations. They will also enter the service phase in 2026. The CAI DT util extern, the CAA real-time clock, the CAA FB factory. They have no successors because there are better ways to achieve the same. In SP21 we will release guidelines how to do this. We also had an update of the CODESYS OPC UA client API. It was initially released in March. It's a free library installed with the installer. It is for using the OPC UA client functionality in the runtime. It provides FBs for connection to the server and for variable access. The update in August adds or finishes the support of the variable access. Now also arrays of user-defined structures can be subscribed, read and written. There was also an update of the control loop library. It's a free store product. It contains functions for process control and signal processing. The update in August brought 4 new transfer functions of control theory: PT1, PT2, IT1 and DT1. Next year we will convert this product into a normal add-on that can be installed with the installer. We also did maintenance of our CODESYS IIoT libraries in May and in August, of our Android apps, CODESYS Web View, CODESYS Sensor App and CODESYS Forge in April and August to comply with developer policies and Android 14 API, and of Oscard's store library Oscard Basic in September to provide Oscard's security fix as a CODESYS package. Currently, we are working still on the CODESYS simulation interface. The development of the basic functionality is reaching the end. We are preparing to show multiple simulation tool integrations on the SPS fair as prototypes. The release date will now be in January next year. The simulation interface will require the PDE license. And the update of the application composer is moved to March next year. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ulf Schünemann. Now to the next exposure. My name is Martin Decker. As product manager, I'm taking care of the CODESYS automation server. Since the last feature briefing about half a year ago, a lot of new developments came into the automation server, which I'm going to present to you now, and I'm also going to talk about the benefits they provide. Since quite some time, it's already possible to access the file system of a PLC through the automation server using the remote gateway functionality and the file browser in the CODESYS development system. However, there are some more requirements regarding the file management of remote PLCs. For example, it should be possible to do this using a normal browser and not necessarily the CODESYS development system, and it should be more easy to handle files on remote PLCs. For this purpose, we implemented the file management in the automation server, which can either be reached over the list view and this folder icon, or via a standalone, a separate icon here, menu entry, file management, PLC files. And once you navigate here, you can select a PLC, which file system you want to browse, and you get an overview of all files on this PLC in the selected path. Once you start with the file management, you have a couple of different options at hand. For example, you can refresh the current view, you can create new folders on the PLC, you can rename folders, of course, you can also rename files, you can transfer files from the PLC to a client or from a client to a PLC, and of course you can also delete folders and files. If you want to create a new directory, that's quite straightforward, just enter name, create the new directory. If you want to transfer files to a PLC, just select the files on your client. You get a confirmation dialog, and then you can start transferring files to the PLC. The other way around, if you want to transfer files from a PLC to a client, you also get an overview, also including progress bars, so you can keep track of the current status of the transfers here. A difference to the CODESYS development system file browser is that in the automation server you also have the possibility to enter free text elements up here. So either you can specify fixed path, or you can also enter placeholders here, which gives you the possibility to navigate to parts of the file system that you cannot reach using the CODESYS development system, because it is not possible to enter placeholders there. So we implemented a comprehensive file management in the automation server. In the first step, it's possible to transfer files between clients and PLCs. In a next step, it will also be possible to deploy additional files together with an application to selected PLCs, and the automation server will then also contain a central file management, own file system in the automation server, which allows it to store files on the automation server, and in a last step also makes it possible then to do manual or automated backups of files on PLCs to the automation server and back. For all of this, no CODESYS development system is needed. You can do it all using your browser. You can bring additional files to your PLC, for example, for using recipes with CODESYS, and you can also add, of course, other user-defined files as you desire. Another feature is the possibility to renew expired Edge Gateway certificates. In case Edge Gateways are in the field and aren't online for more than 6 months, the certificates expire and the connection between the Edge Gateway and the CODESYS automation server cannot be established anymore. This needed to be fixed. There needed to be some kind of workaround, and for this purpose we implemented a new functionality. First, you can read out the log of an Edge Gateway, which tells you that an Edge Gateway is expired, and in the next step you can decide to allow a temporary connection, and this connection then can only be used to renew the certificate on the Edge Gateway. Once you allow the temporary connection, the Edge Gateway certificate is renewed and a fully functional connection is re-established, so you can work with your automation server and Edge Gateway as desired. You can also benefit from improved user experience and improved workflows in the automation server. On the start page, we added a new tile which we can fill with content, like for example information about new features, as you can see in this example. Furthermore, we added some new explanations in warnings which describe even better what implications updating applications using the automation servers have on your PLCs and applications themselves. Users can now see their own user roles, and by knowing their user roles, know what they can do or are not allowed to do in the automation server when they're logged in with their personal user. In the network scan, it's even faster now to add PLCs, so you can add multiple PLCs in almost no time. And one thing that is now completely analog to the behavior in the CODESYS development system is that when you reset warm or reset cold, an application on a PLC using the automation server, the application will not automatically go into run mode afterwards, but will stay in stop mode and you will have to start it manually. A feature that will be released with the next version of the CODESYS automation server in December 2024 is the certificate management. There were a lot of requirements regarding the certificate management. For example, it should be possible to have an overview of all existing certificates on PLCs that are connected to the automation server. It should be easier to handle certificates on PLCs. There should be notifications before the expiration of certificates, and for this purpose we implemented a certificate management in the automation server. It gives you an overview over all certificates of the connected PLCs and also Edge Gateways if desired, including additional information. For example, the expiration date of the certificate, the use cases the certificates are made for, the trust levels. So what folders are they stored in? Are they in the trusted store? Are they in the own certificate store or in the quarantine store, for example? And of course, you also see on which PLC the certificate is. Furthermore, it gives you a couple of possibilities. For example, you can filter this list by specific PLCs and then refresh the certificates on those PLCs. Furthermore, you can create new self-signed certificates, including all the configuration you have to do. So select the use case, the validity period, and also the key length. And then you can create a certificate on either one or even more PLCs at once. Using this button up here, you can transfer a certificate from a device to your client, for example, to open it there. And when you want to move a certificate on a PLC, the automation server also gives you the possibility to move certificates from one trust store to another. So this example, from the own trust store to the quarantine folder.
So with the next release of the CODESYS automation server, there will be comprehensive possibilities regarding the certificate management, all browser-based, no necessity to use the CODESYS development system, including a lot of extra features like, for example, search and filter possibilities, easy workflows, notification possibilities if desired. Another feature that will come with the automation server in the next version is the possibility to establish a fully encrypted communication. The requirement is clear here. Communication should be as secure as possible, and you all might know this view from the CODESYS development system. PLC is connected through an edge gateway to a workstation, and in case of the automation server, the edge gateway establishes a secure connection, an encrypted connection to the CODESYS automation server, and a client can also communicate to the automation server using a securely encrypted connection. Typically, an edge gateway and a PLC are located in the same network or even run on the same device. However, up to now, this connection between PLC and Edge Gateway was not encrypted. With the new release of the automation server, it will be possible to also encrypt this tiny bit of connection here if desired, so this will be optional. And as an alternative, it will also be possible to do an end-to-end encryption from the CODESYS development system through the automation server, through the Edge Gateway to the PLC if desired. So with this next release, there will be comprehensive possibilities to encrypt the communication, and there will be also some special features like a quick setup or a connection testing, and of course also the possibility to do bulk operations or to enable a mandatory encryption for all PLCs that are connected with a certain edge gateway. Thank you for your attention and enjoy the new features of the CODESYS automation server.
That's it from my side. Let's move on to the next agenda point.
Hello, my name is Andreas Kehrer. I'm a product manager for the runtime and safety products.
Today I want to present you 4 topics for the CODESYS runtime system SDK, and I want to start with the service phase and discontinuations of the runtime products, general improvements inside of the runtime system, the Cyber Resilience Act and our activities for that, and last but not least, news for the independent release of the runtime system. Let's start with the discontinuations. First of all, we discontinued the CMP Circus 3 component, and we discontinued the Windows CE support for our runtime system. For the PLC handler, we put the ActiveX support into the service phase, since Microsoft already announced the end of life for the ActiveX technology, and the end of life of the ActiveX support for the PLC handler is planned for December 2025. Let's come to the general improvements inside of the runtime system, and the first one is the system RTC and the year 2038 problem. This is what we solved now for all standard platforms, for Linux, for Windows, VxWorks and QNX. And with this fix, the system RTC implementation is future-proof again. Next is the PLC handler. It now supports the user management. So now you are able to manage the user management inside of the runtime system. For example, you now are able to create users inside of the runtime system. Another thing is the interval for key generation in the runtime system. This is now configurable. That means, especially on smaller systems, the key generation takes some time, and this is done on every startup and after 24 hours. And to reduce the load, the CPU load on such systems, the length, the interval for the key generation is now configurable. Another thing is the configuration of the IAC task start time, which is also now configurable via an IAC interface. So now you can set the start time of a task, and that enables you to execute two tasks on using the same resources, for example, the same core. And now you can configure them that you can both run them with real-time behaviors without any additional jitter because of the same resources. Next thing is the improvement of the follow-up time in the network licenses. So we've made the network licenses even more resilient for network problems. Another thing is the support of the muscle libc for the Linux runtimes. By now we just support the glibc, but now we also support the muscle libc. Last but not least, we've implemented a new backend for our user management in the runtime system. We connected the runtime system user management with the user management of the operating system. So now using the technology of Linux, the Linux PAM. So now you can have the same users in the runtime system than in the operating system. Let's come to another block of improvements for the CODESYS redundancy. There we improved the performance for the cyclic synchronized data. So the synchronization, the cyclic synchronization of the data is optimized to improve the whole system. Then we did some bug fixes for the dual link redundancy system. That means if you have a redundant system and you have two links between the two PLCs, we had some issues in there, and these are now fixed, and now it's a more resilient system. A new interface is implemented for acyclic data and the synchronization of acyclic data in a redundant system. And we use that interface, for example, to synchronize the PLC states. So that it also includes certificates, configurations, and the user management. They're now synchronized between the two PLCs, and you don't have to take care by yourself if you use the CODESYS redundancy. Let's come to the next topic, the Cyber Resilience Act. I guess most of you already heard about that. And of course, it's also relevant for our products since it's relevant for all the connected products, hardware and software. So it's also for our runtime system. And key points are the cybersecurity by design, which we integrated in our development process since years. There is a requirement for security updates, which we already provide, incident reporting, conformity assessment. So lots of these things we already provide, but beside of that, we also prepare for the Cyber Resilience Act. So we have two process certification ongoing, the ISO 27001 certification, which we are doing right now. And after the first certification, we are going for the 62443 process certification. And we do that because the Cyber Resilience Act will be harmonized with these two standards. And if you're certified according to those standards, you should have no problems with the Cyber Resilience Act. As a next step, we also aim to do a product certification for our runtime system, the SL2 certification according 62443. Let's come to the last topic, the independent release. And actually the Cyber Resilience Act is also a main reason why we are pushing forward in the independent release. By now, the runtime system is released together with the IDE, with the CODESYS Essentials. They have the same versions, and we do the same service packs once a year, and then we have patches on that service packs. Patch means that it's still the code base of the service pack, and we just do bug fixes and small improvements and patch it back to these service pack. In the field, we have quite a lot versions in the field, and if we have to do a security patch, then we have to do it for quite a lot of versions. So not only once, but for every version in the field. Now we want to change that, so the runtime system will not be released together with the CODESYS Essentials, but we will have several service pack releases a year. So for the service pack 21, it will be still the same, and also for the service pack 22, we plan to do it together with the CODESYS Essentials. but starting from Service Pack 23, this will be done every 2 or 3 months, and there will be no patches on that versions, because in the runtime system, since the last 10 service packs, we've stayed compatible anyway, so this is not a major step. The service packs stay compatible, but there won't be patch versions. If there is a new version, it will always automatically include all the security patches we've done. And if in future there might be an incompatible version, we will switch the version from the version 3.5 to a new version 4.0. We do not change it now, version 3.5, so this stays compatible. And if there's an incompatible change, we will change to version 4.0. For the version in the service phase, we then also define an end of life of this version, and this end of life will be at least 5 years, so device vendors will have at least 5 years to switch to the new version, which is the active living product. For CODESYS safety, I have 4 topics today. The first is the roadmap for SIL 2. Then we have the safety for EtherCAT safety module roadmap, the new releases for the CODESYS safety add-on itself, capable for SIL 3, and last but not least, the CODESYS safe control core, which is the base for the virtual safe control. Let's start with SIL 2. We have a release scheduled for Service Pack 21. First, I have to say that we've skipped the release based on Service Pack 20. The release on Service Pack 21 has included the factory function blocks, PLC Open Safety function blocks version 2, and some minor bug fixes and improvements. It will be based, as already said, on Service Pack 21, and Service Pack 21 is scheduled for March 2025, and the SIL 2 release will be like 4 to 6 weeks later, so it will be Q2 2025. Let's have a look to the roadmap for Service Pack 22. We have one major thing to do, and this is the independent release for Safety SIL 2. For CODESYS Safety SIL 3, we've already implemented independent release so that the safety add-on itself is independent from the CODESYS Essential version. This is already available for SIL 3, and now we want to do the same for the SIL 2 solution too. Let's come to the next product. It's the safety for EtherCAT safety module, in short ESM. We've done a release version 4.4 with it's a maintenance and bug fix version, and we've already scheduled the next version, the version 4.5. And here we also want to achieve the independent release, so also the ESM add-on should be independent from the CODESYS Essential version. In addition to that, we want to support the backup AX8000 drives. The next is the safety add-on, so capable for SIL 3. We've done the version 4.2 release. First, it's the first safety add-on qualification with the TOV suite. We've used a brand new FSM process, which is much more efficient and allows us to do a more frequent release of the safety add-on. It's already independent from CODESYS Essential, so the version 4.2 you are able to install it on any CODESYS Essential version higher than SP19 patch 4. So you can install it directly with no qualification on Service Pack 20, patch 1, patch 2 whatsoever. In addition to that, we have implemented the 64-bit support in that version. So in every version lower than version 4.2 in 1.6 and things like that, it's only the 32-bit version supported. Now we support only the 64-bit version. In addition to that, we have the ProfiSafe version 2.6 support, including also the TCI support inside. And we've already planned, as I said, we plan now much more more frequent version release of the add-on. We've already planned a version 4.3 for end of this year, and it will have minor improvements for the virtual safe control as well. As said, end of this year's December, the release is already planned. Last but not least, let's come to the Safe Control Core. As I said, this is, as you can see here, the core for the CODESYS Virtual Safe Control SL, which we provide then as SL product in our CODESYS store. The core is the CODESYS Safety Runtime Toolkit, which we've released like 10 years ago. It's a runtime system in source. It has unit and integration tests. It has the safety add-on included and the user integration manual. It's a proven and used software certified by the TÜV Rheinland initially, and now it's certified by the TÜV Süd. The next step, so this is as it is today. The next step is the Safe Control Core, which is delivered as a binary. It includes at the moment the ProfiSafe version 2.6, and it also has a user and an integration manual. It's delivered as a binary, and it can be executed on any x86 hardware you want. So there's no hardware certification anymore. What we did is we took the two channels which are before it was in hardware. Now we have them in software. One channel is executed native, and the other channel is executed in using decoded processing technology. And by executing the code in two different ways with different data, the system is capable to detect any hardware error and is capable to reach that way the SIL3 level. This is delivered as a binary, and for the SL product, we use that binary, put it into a standard runtime system, exchange the execution core, and now we have a virtual safe control SL running the safe application in the safe control core using all the infrastructure of a standard control SL runtime. It's ready to use, and it's licensed via the app-based business model by the number of safe connections you're using. The release for all of that is planned for December this year. Let's have a look to the feature set of the Safe Control Core in the first version. It's the Safe Control Core for SL release. It will contain only ProfiSafe version 2.6. It has a ProfiSafe diagnosis extension, so you can easily access diagnosis data from the standard PLC. It has the PLC Open Safety function blocks in version 1 and the standard library inside. What's the roadmap for the next version for 2025? The Safe Control Core for device vendors. So the part in the middle is not released as a device vendor product. It will be released as a device vendor product, so that also device vendors are capable to use that core and build a safe PLC based on standard hardware. It will have an interface for external function blocks, so that device vendors are capable to extend the functionality by their own function blocks. It has also the standard runtime interfaces from the standard runtime, so all the communication parts and the diagnosis are easy to do, and the interfaces are already well known. And all of that needs to be packaged in a device vendor package, including a manual, the user manual, and things like that. Beside of that, we of course want to have the FSOE support inside, and we want to support ARM864 platforms.
Thank you, Andreas Kehrer. We proceed with the next presentation.
Hello, my name is Domenik Vögel. I'm product manager for the CODESYS Control SL runtime products.
I would like to start with the topic of virtual controls. The eagerly awaited Virtual Control SL was released in July of this year with SL version 4.12. This new generation of PLC brings with it many special advantages that conventional control platforms cannot offer. Significant cost savings can be expected, especially for large centralized systems, thanks to the enormous scalability and the possibility of central maintenance and servicing using technologies from the IT environment. Virtual Control also scores with simple commissioning, administration, maintenance, and a high level of security thanks to the encapsulation of individual instances. You can find a more detailed description and additional information on the CODESYS website and various videos on our CODESYS YouTube channel. However, the development of the virtual control system is not yet complete, and we still have a number of improvements and innovations planned, such as an easy import and export feature for the instance information of the virtual control, and a drop-down menu for selecting different NICs, and also a concept for improved security, just to name a few examples. Released together with the VPLC and SL version 4.12 was also the license server for Linux SL package. This CODESYS add-on deploys CodeMeter runtime and also Cockpit and the corresponding web-based management plugin of CODESYS on the target. The web-based management, as can be seen in the screenshot, can be controlled via browser, and additional licenses can there be added to the desired network license server on the target. The IP address of the network license server from which the VPLC instances then obtain the licenses can be stored in the settings of the virtual controller instance. This first step towards the web-based management lays the foundation for supporting additional functions such as simple PLC management and real-time optimizations on the target for the future. Also released with SL version 4.12 was the package Target Visu for Linux SL. With this package, we want to aim at two different use cases in particular. First, as depicted on screen, is the local target visu, which runs directly on the controller. And as shown in the second image, we have a remote target visu which connects to another controller. With this new target visu package, we want to deliver a standardized SL product to provide reliable target visualizations on Linux systems. Another very interesting current development is the complete revision of the Control SL deploy tool. We aim for a migration of all SL runtimes and services into a central tool to standardize deployment. The screenshot shows the interface of the deploy tool in CODESYS, and in this first tab, the connection to the target is established and the information relevant for CODESYS is already retrieved. In the next tab, the runtimes and services available and supported on the target device can be deployed, and of course there's also an overview of the installed packages and images on the device. In the last tab, Operation, the products can be managed and configured. It is also possible to start and stop runtimes here and adjust settings for services and especially VPLC instances. And in the future, there will also be the option to save different instance configurations of the virtual controller to improve usability, as already mentioned before. Other future improvements we are currently working on or will be working on in the near future are increasing the security of CODESYS runtimes under Linux by removing generic root rights. Here we plan for a release with version 4.15 in the first quarter of 2025. And also the RPM integration and the support of the Red Hat base image. Here the target release date is already with version 4.14 in December of this year.
Thank you, Domenik Vögel. One more time, Bernhard Reiter.
Regarding the communication features in CODESYS, we have a few large developments ongoing this year. I already introduced them in the last feature briefing in the first quarter of this year. So in this presentation, I will not talk a lot about new features, but will give a status update regarding these ongoing developments. The first topic I want to talk about is the embedded server profile certification. The implementation of the features has been completed in the meantime, specifically with data change filters and monitoring triggers. The next step is now to send a test version of our OPC UA server to the certification lab this fall. We are confident that the release planned for Service Pack 21 is still possible. Please also note that the communication add-on in version 4.6 will be required additionally to make use of all new features. It will be released shortly after Service Pack 21. As part of our certification, we also reworked the alarms and conditions support in CODESYS. Now the alarms and conditions will be compliant to the OPC UA standard, but the implementation itself is still based on the Alarm Manager feature in CODESYS. The workflow for configuring the alarms exported in the server will change though. It will be based on the new symbol set editor, and as you can see here in the screenshot, a new tab for configuring the exported alarm groups is available. So in contrast to the old symbol configuration where it was only possible to export all alarm groups or none, now you can specifically configure for each individual symbol set which alarms should be exported. The standard compliance of the alarms also requires that specific configurations are made for the alarms in the Alarm Manager. We will provide documentation detailing the required steps so that the alarm compliance for our OPC UA server can be reached. Please also note that the usage of custom alarm definitions from companion specifications is not part of this initial release, so only the basic alarms will be supported. The last topic I want to talk about is the redundancy support in OPC UA. This is actually a new feature I have not talked about in the last feature briefing. PLC redundancy in CODESYS means that you have two PLCs which run in parallel, and as soon as one PLC has some kind of hardware failure, for example, then the passive PLC will take over control to replace it without having to interrupt the controlled machine or process. The OPC UA server is now also fully capable of this redundancy, and this means that it publishes to the client's information that there is a redundant server available and also the state the server itself has. So in case of a switchover, when one of the PLCs fails, the clients lose the connection to the OPC UA server, but know where the backup server can be found and can actively connect then to the second server again. This explicit management of the server redundancy on the client side is called the non-transparent redundancy in OPC UA. This feature is also planned to be released in Service Pack 21. I'm already at the end of my presentation and thank you for your attention.
Great presentation, Bernhard Reiter. Stay tuned for the next one.
Hello, my name is Stefan Ambros. I'm responsible for the CODESYS visualization. Today, I show you the latest developments in this area.
First of all, I want to start with the improvements to responsive design. The extensions make it possible to position elements based on the client size. The variables container size and visu size are available for this purpose. These variables can be used with absolute movement to position elements. When you configure the difference between container width and visu width, the element is aligned to the right side, as we can see later. Container size is the client size on each main page. This gives you the following possibilities. Elements can be aligned on the right side. Areas can be filled. For this, we look to the following example. Here, as you can see, the CODESYS logo, for example, in the title, is aligned on the right size with the configuration in the absolute movement. For the trend element, you can see that the trend element fills the newly available area. For this purpose, you can use the relative movement. with the bottom right edges. Another possibility is to wrap content. As you can see here, the packing object is moved to the bottom when the client size is decreased. And the scroll bar appears if the complete content of the page cannot be displayed. The elements in feed, gradient sensor and so on can be embedded in a dynamically scrollable frame for this purpose. Such a container element is available in the toolbox. I want to show you the responsive design features in the example project. At the moment we are in full screen mode, no scroll bars are shown. When I change it, scroll bars appear, and when I reduce the client size, content is wrapped to the bottom of the page. The same happens on the trend page. The trend increases automatically and fills the new area. In the settings page, when I reduce the client size, the packing object is wrapped to the bottom. And I can scroll the content. The next topic is the client-specific localization. Each visualization client can have its own language. The clients start with the browser language, DE, EN for example, and the browser language codes must exist in the text list. If the language does not exist, the standard language is used. Language switching only takes place in the current client, so each client can have its own language. Now we come to the alarm management. New features are that we allow online change in the most common use cases. For example, add, remove, modify alarms in an alarm group, or add, remove, modify alarm instances in an alarm configuration. Another possibility is to use alarm group templates for types that come from another library. Alarm group templates can be used to specify alarms for a specific type, like a function block or a structure. Now we provide also the possibility to call alarm events from the instance of a function block. Here you can see the function to raise the alarm event. When you raise this from the function block itself, you can pass the sys pointer and the ID from the alarm event. Here you see the configuration of an alarm group template with an observation type event for the function block myFB. In the alarm configuration editor, you can see here the instances which have an alarm group template, to which alarm groups they are assigned and if they should be created. Now we come to the next topic, XY chart and trend. The XY chart supports now time data types. It's now possible to show time-dependent data in an XY chart. Arrays of the following types can now be used: time, date, time of day, or date and time. Format strings can be specified, here as an example for date and time, or only for time. And here you can see now an XY chart which shows the data over a specific time period. In the trend, we now support a dynamic recording interval. The use case is you wish to adjust the speed of the trend recording at runtime. A new configuration option is provided in the trend. This can slow down the recording by a factor. Here is the configuration measurement slowdown factor, which can also be a variable. So now it's possible to reduce the recording speed at runtime and also to fasten it up. The last topic is the visualization scripting step 1. In the visualization step 1, you can create or modify visualizations via CODESYS Python scripting. So you can create visualizations, you can add elements, remove elements and modify elements in this visualization. You can change the properties. Here you now can see an example code. First we get the primary project, then we find the application. In the application we create a new visualization object. Now we get the element list of this new visualization object and can add a new rectangle element and set the position. In the first step it would be possible to set element properties, you can configure input actions, and you can set frame references.
Thank you, Stefan Ambros. Let's continue with the next topic.
Hello, I'm Georg Seidel. I'm product manager for the CODESYS motion products. I'd like to give you a short overview of the new motion functionality. We start with halting of superimposed movements. Then I'll tell you about changes in our drive support. A main part will be extensions to our cam functionality, and we'll finish with the new forecast feature. Let's start with superimposed movements. We implemented the standard function block MC halt superimposed from the PC Open for motion control. This function block allows to halt a superimposed movement without affecting the underlying movement. A superimposed movement is one commanded with MC move superimposed. Next, the drive support. We've got a new driver for the Mitsubishi Mail Servo series. And we discontinued our Circus driver. This was necessary because the Circus stack in CODESYS was discontinued as well. Of course, you can still use the existing Circus driver from older of motion versions in existing projects and for existing applications. Now let's have a look at the cam extensions. The first is distance-based ramping in. We have new inputs, master start distance and master sync position, which work the same as for MC gear in pause, which can be used to implement a flying saw. Here we see an example. We have a cam function block with master drive and slave drive A. And here we have used the new start mode ramp in dist to activate the distance-based ramping in. The master start distance is 10 units. This means ramping in will take 10 master units. So it's not given as a time or distance in the slave units, but relative to the master. And the master sync position, 120 degrees, means at this master position, ramping in will be finished. Let's look at an example diagram here. You can see the master position in gold and the slave position in green. And we see the position in the first diagram, the velocity in the second, acceleration in the third, and here we see the cam state, and the green flag indicates the in sync, which means the cam is started here and the syncing is taking place until this position. So here the slave is ramped into the cam. And you can see that the syncing is done in a smooth manner. It's in fact using a polynomial of degree 5, just like the gear in pause. The next new thing is support for polynomials of degree 7. Before we only supported degree 5. you see here the cam editor in the IDE. And here we have the new segment type, Poly 7. And yeah, the main new thing is that now also the jerk is very smooth and doesn't have any jumps in between segments compared to Poly 5. Another new thing is the so-called Cam Builder API. So what is the Cam Builder API? It's meant for creating cams from the application, from ISC code. This has been possible so far, but you had to fill in internal data structures, so it wasn't very convenient. And the Cam Builder offers a very nice and comfortable and efficient API to create cams. Let's look at an example. We initialize a Cam Builder and now we call append 3 times. This will create a cam table with 3 segments, and inside append we can specify which kind of segment we want using these constructor functions. In this example we only use Poly 5. We could also use linear segments or Poly 7 segments here, of course. And each of these Poly 5 segments is defined using 2 boundary conditions. And a special feature is to have implicit boundaries, which means our system will automatically determine the boundaries, in this case from the start of the cam table. So the first boundary is implicit, the left one, and the right boundary is master position 120, slave position 120, slave velocity 1. And for the next segment, we have again an implicit left boundary, which means the system will fill in the right boundary of the previous segment. And we have an explicit right boundary at this position and velocity. And last, we have a final polynomial that ends here. And together, this will result in a cam table like this, with a polynomial ramp in, a linear middle part, and a polynomial ramp out. Another new thing for the cam in function block is the buffer mode input. Now, like many other function blocks, like move velocity, move absolute, cam in also has a buffer mode. And the main use of this buffer mode is to make it easier to have several cams in a row that don't have any gap or jump in between them, but a smooth transition. This has been possible before. For example, you could change the cam table ID using cam table select once the end of the previous cam table was reached, or you could start a new cam table with a new rising edge of execute once the previous cam was finished, but then you had to use the master offset to avoid gaps. And now we have this much more convenient and easy mode, just commanding a second cam table with mode buffered. So now let's have a look at the last of our features, the forecast. Let's have a look at the user interface for the forecast feature. We have a new function block called getTravelTime. And you simply pass an axis and a position, and this function block will tell you the duration until this position will be reached in the future. And this is like a basic functionality that can be used to implement things like triggers on the path. Let me give you an example use case. Let's assume you want to do glue dispensing, and the glue dispenser has a dead time of, say, 100 milliseconds. So this means you need to turn it on 100 milliseconds before you reach the position where you want to dispense the glue. And you can use getTravelTime for this exactly. You give the position where the glue should be dispensed, and then you can monitor the duration output until you reach the 100 milliseconds. Another function block for reading out the forecast is the read set values, which has a new input time offset. And with this you can query the axis position, velocity, acceleration and jerk in the future. In this example, 300 milliseconds in the future. And again, a similar use case would be you want to adapt your glue dispensing based on the velocity of your axis. Considering a dead time of 100 milliseconds, you need to know the velocity of your axis that it will have in 100 milliseconds in the future. This can be done with read set values now. Let's look at an example. You see in moving axis here, the position, velocity, acceleration. And here, what I output here is the duration from get travel time until position 8 is reached. Position 8 is reached here at the right cursor, and we will be notified 300 milliseconds in advance, and each cycle this time will be reduced, of course, until we reach position 8. And all the time we have a very precise timing and duration information when we will reach the position. So that's the end of my presentation. Thanks for your attention.
Very interesting, Georg Seidel. Let's come back to Hilmar Panzer again.
From Service Pack 21 onwards, devices that have a bus cycle task are specially marked in the device tree. The tasks that work as a bus cycle task also receive the same decoration, these two small blue circular arrows. A bus cycle task is important because this is where the exchange with the physical IOs takes place. If an incorrect bus cycle task is set, the variables are updated unsynchronized and often at the wrong time. This is a problem that we regularly encounter in our customer support. We hope that this marker will enable the user to recognize more quickly whether the setting is done correctly. It can be changed in the tab IO mapping for the respective device or globally in the device's PLC settings. Then we have decided to tackle a major topic in the area of devices and Fieldbus, online change for devices and device settings. This requires some far-reaching changes to the device concept and will probably be available only in Service Pack 22, that means in 2026. For the first step, we are concentrating on the drivers for the local IOs and for Profinet. I will give you an update on this in the next feature briefing. We are currently working on CAN-FD for the CODESYS communication protocol. That means the communication between the programming system and the runtime. In addition, the layer 2 communication can be used by the application itself. There are currently no plans to support CAN-FD by our CAN-Open solution. Already in March, there was a new version of the EDS import plugin, which mainly contained bug fixes. J1939 was updated in August. In addition to some bug fixes, the graphical signal editor is particularly worth mentioning. It offers the user an interactive graphical interface alongside the existing tabular view. This allows to arrange the desired signals much easier. In April, a new I/O Link version 4.3 was released, which includes a gateway interface. External tools can now read and write I/O Link parameters via this. Modbus was or will be updated in versions 4.4 in May and 4.5 in December, containing bug fixes and minor improvements. Ethernet IP was released as version 4.6 in June. This allows you to pass the conformance test 20. The connection API, which provides application-based access to the status and other properties of the connections, was originally also planned for this version, but will be included in version 4.7, which we will be launching in the next few days. There are also significant runtime performance improvements, which are particularly apparent when the IOs are not mapped to distant variables, but are located one after the other in the memory. A new editor in the scanner configurator is planned for 2025, which will provide an overview of all connections. We also want to expand the interface for asynchronous services in the adapter, so that they also enable acyclical provision of data. Currently, the data must be provided immediately. That means in the same call. If the data has to be fetched from somewhere else first, that means, for example, from a file, this is not possible, as this would destroy the real-time property. With the new extension, we make it possible to provide a response a few cycles later. We have also worked intensively on Profinet. The 4.5 version family contains bug fixes and some improvements. Worth mentioning is especially TCI in the safety area. This allows external tools from manufacturers to be used. These connect to the ProfiSafe device via our Profinet stack and allow safe parameterization. This version also contains the requirements for Profinet 2.6. The GSDML schema in version 2.44 is supported, and all requirements are included to pass the conformity test with a 2-port device. We are currently working on a version to be released in November that will support the new test version 2.45, a prerequisite for the certification of virtual controls. Another new feature is the access to ProfiSafe diagnostics. Next year, we would like to provide a topology editor that gives a graphical overview of the network and the status of the devices and connections. The automatic generation of a visualization is also planned, so that it can be integrated into the user interface. In addition, we will support dynamic reconfiguration, a Profinet feature that allows fast and smooth switching to a new configuration, and which we need as a basis for the previously mentioned online change capability of the device tree. Of course, we did also a lot of corrections and enhancements to EtherCAD. In April, we rolled out version 4.7, which can import SCI files. We have also ensured that this version can be executed on our embedded runtime in principle. We added the option of mapping the FSOE connections manually, which is necessary if a third-party FSOE main device is used in the system. When using the CODESYS FSOE main device, the mapping is done automatically. In version 4.8 in September, the mailbox gateway was added, through which other tools can communicate with the sub-devices via routing. A diagnostic statistics page for distributed clocks was created to provide an overview of the time distribution of frames. There will be a maintenance version with bug fixes at the beginning of next year.
Appreciated, Hilmar Panzer. Let's move on with the agenda.
Hello, I'm Kevin Ketterle. Today I'm speaking in my role as product manager of CODESYS Go. This is the new web-based programming system which will be available soon. And what soon actually means, stay tuned. Our main focus is currently on the development of the Fieldbus configuration in CODESYS Go. There are some conceptual changes compared to version 3. The most important change is that the configuration data is stored in text files. These files are Fieldbus specific and, depending on the Fieldbus, follow an already defined standard format or are defined by us proprietarily, preferably in a JSON structure whose properties follow the wording of the Fieldbus. It is crucial that these files are human readable and can also be read, compared, edited, generated or otherwise processed outside the user interface. The same applies to the I/O mapping and the definition of the I/O tasks. Over time, we will of course add the already familiar graphical Fieldbus configurators, which will then be based directly on these text files. This will ensure that the ease of use required in day-to-day usage is not neglected. The core component of the new concept is the middle box, which generates the Fieldbus independent generic device model from these new text files, the associated device descriptions and I/O libraries, which are then converted into compilable code. This data is usually hidden from the user, but it is kept in the context of the project to optimize load and compile times as long as the configuration does not change. It is worth noting that both device descriptions and I/O libraries from CODESYS version 3 are used. We attach great importance to compatibility here so that users can continue to work with existing devices. Let me summarize the new concept in other words. For many users, nothing will change. They will be able to set up their Fieldbus in a graphical configurator with existing infrastructure, just like with CODESYS version 3. For some users, the additional textual abstraction layer will provide a large number of new options that go beyond purely graphical configuration. I have already presented important concept changes for libraries in previous feature briefings. Today, I would just like to reiterate that due to the large number of existing libraries for CODESYS version 3, we will continue to support them in CODESYS Go. As an important development milestone, we have now achieved the ability to create CODESYS version 3 compatible compiled libraries from within CODESYS Go. We have thus taken a big step towards ensuring that CODESYS Go will soon be realistically usable for library developers. I will now show you how to create such a compiled library from a CODESYS Go project using the command line interface. The built-in documentation helps me. At the end, the compiled library is output to my test directory and can now be installed into the CODESYS version 3 library repository and used from there. In the following, I will arrange two windows next to each other. This shows in general that we are in no way inferior to a classic desktop-based development environment in terms of the ease of use of the web application. More important, however, is the content of the two windows, which is the option editor for program settings and the underlying configuration file, again in a textual format. Changes in the editor have an immediate effect on the file, and because it happens to be the text size, also on the appearance in the editor. If you delete the entry from the file, the value automatically reverts from the user-specific setting to the global setting. On the one hand, this shows that options can be defined in different scopes. It also repeats the concept that all CODESYS relevant data is initially stored in human-readable text files, which then can be optionally be edited with an integrated editor.
Thank you, Kevin Ketterle. Yeah, now we are at the end of this event. Thank you very much for joining us. There were several questions that we could answer directly. Some we need to get more information, and we come back to the guys that asked these questions directly. Thanks for joining us, for spending your time with us. I hope it was interesting to you, and hope to see you next time. Or if you have the chance to travel to Nuremberg and the SPS fair, you will find us in Hall 7, booth 677. Looking forward to seeing you. Thank you. Goodbye.